I've never told this story in full. Not to friends, not to the Rangers, not even to Rose, not all of it. But it's been eating at me for 2 years, and maybe writing it down will stop me waking up at 3:35 every goddamn morning. It happened in early October up in Gifford Pinchot National Forest. Rose and I had been dating for 4 years, lived together in a cramped apartment in Seattle, and we both needed a digital detox. I'm a sysadmin, she's a photographer. We spent way too many hours staring at screens, so we packed my green 2018 Subaru Outback with our new gear and drove 3 hours to a trailhead off Forest Road 23. The plan, hike 5 miles in, camp 2 nights at a small glacial lake that wasn't on most maps. No cell service, no people, just us. The first afternoon was perfect. Crisp air, low sun cutting through the Douglas firs. We pitched our MSR Elixir 2 in a flat clearing about 40 meters from the tree line. I remember thinking how quiet it was. Not the good kind of quiet, the kind where you don't hear birds, don't hear rodents rustling. Nothing. Just our breathing and the crunch of pine needles. I brushed it off as the cold. Rose said it felt like the forest was holding its breath. I laughed and told her she'd been watching too many horror movies. God, I was an idiot. By sundown, we had a good fire going inside a stone ring. We'd eaten beef stroganoff from a Jetboil pouch and passed a flask of cheap bourbon between us. The stars came out, clear and sharp. I was leaning back against a log, staring at the tree line, when I saw it. A figure, standing perfectly still just inside the edge of the firs, maybe 40 meters away. Human-shaped, but the firelight couldn't reach it. Just a black vertical smudge against the black trunks. I went still. You know that feeling when your brain tries to redraw what you're seeing into something normal? Mine screamed tree stump, shadow. But it was too tall, and it had the outline of shoulders. I grabbed my black diamond headlamp and clicked it on. The beam cut a white cone through the dark. The figure was gone. Just trees. I stood up, my heart thumping stupidly, and swept the light back and forth. Nothing. I told Rose I thought I saw a deer. I'm a terrible liar, but she let it go. 10 minutes passed. We were talking about her next photo project when her hand clamped onto my forearm. Jack, it's closer. She didn't scream, didn't even raise her voice. That scared me more. I twisted around, and there it was. Maybe 30 meters now, half hidden behind a trunk, but unmistakably a figure, a person. I caught the outline of a head, the dark mass of a coat. It wasn't moving. I fumbled for my flashlight, but my hands were shaking. The moment the beam hit it, it just slipped sideways. Not like a person walking, like a curtain drawn over a doorway. "We're putting out the fire," I said. My voice cracked. "Now!" We doused the flames with water from our Nalgene's and scrambled into the tent. I zipped the mesh shut and sat there, knife in hand, a little Mora I always brought, my heart hammering against my ribs. Rose crouched beside me, her breath quick and shallow. For a while, nothing. Complete silence. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums. And then footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Not an animal. Too heavy. Too deliberate. They circled the tent slowly. Once. Twice. I couldn't tell direction. The sound seemed to come from everywhere. Then the breathing started. Right outside the fabric, maybe 6 inches from my head. A thick, wet, rasping sound, like someone with a chest cold dragging air through clenched teeth. It went on and on. I could feel the warmth of it. Or maybe I imagined that. I don't know. Rose pressed her fist against her mouth to keep from crying out. I sat frozen, gripping the knife so hard my knuckles went white. Around midnight, the footsteps faded into the distance. I thought, stupid, desperate hope that maybe they had left. But then they came back, closer. The breathing resumed, this time at the foot of the tent. I could sense the weight of something pressing down the pine needles just outside. My mind ran through every rational explanation. A bear, a drunk local, some messed up survivalist. But bears don't breathe like that, and people don't just vanish from a flashlight beam. Rose whispered, "It's been 3 hours. They're waiting for something." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We didn't sleep. We didn't dare move. Every few minutes the footsteps would circle, stop, then that wet breathing would start again, sometimes with a low rumble that I felt in my sternum. At exactly 3:35 in the morning, my watch beeped. I'd set it to track my heart rate. Idiot move. Right after that beep, something slammed into the side of the tent. The whole structure bowed inward, the poles groaning. Rose screamed. I yelled, just raw noise, and flicked on my headlamp. Through the nylon, I saw the impression of a palm, fingers spread, pressing hard. The fabric stretched, the seams straining. Then the palm slid sideways with a scratch like a fingernail dragging across tarp. The breathing came right up against the mesh ventilation panel, steaming it up. I could smell it. Sour sweat and wet earth, and something else, something metallic. I don't remember what I shouted. Something like, "I have a knife, I'll kill you." Pathetic. The breathing stopped. For 1 second, absolute stillness. Then the footsteps retreated, not hurried, just walked away into the forest. We clung to each other until the sky began to lighten. When the first gray light leaked through the trees, we moved. We didn't break camp. We tore it down, stuffing sleeping bags still damp with condensation into their sacks. As I yanked the last stake from the ground, Rose tugged my sleeve and pointed. About 15 meters from where we'd slept, on a massive Douglas fir, there were marks, fresh gashes in the bark, arranged in a vertical row. I counted them out loud. 1, 2, 3, 7. Exactly 7. The last one, the lowest, still oozing clear sap, the wound wet and sticky. The ground underneath was trampled, the needles pressed flat, but there were no footprints, just deep oval depressions where someone, something, had stood for hours. "What the hell is that?" Rose's voice was a whisper. I shook my head, felt my stomach flip. It looked like a tally. 7 days, 7 nights, 7 something. Had it been marking time, watching us all night and counting down? I took a photo on my phone, shaking so badly the shot is a blur, and we practically ran the 5 miles back to the car. We drove away in silence, the heater blasting, the forest shrinking in the rearview mirror. I didn't stop shaking until we hit the interstate. At home, we locked the doors, pulled the curtains. I reported it to the Skamania County Sheriff's Office. A deputy went out there, found our campsite, the tree with the marks, but said there were no tracks, no evidence. He suggested maybe it was some homeless guy off his meds. I wanted to believe that. But there's one more thing. A week after we got back, Rose found her Sony voice recorder at the bottom of her pack. She'd forgotten to turn it off that night. It must have bumped on during the scramble. Most of the file is just rustling and our panicked breathing. But at about 3:36 a.m., right after the slam on the tent, there's a section of silence. Then a voice, not ours. It's low, throaty, barely a whisper, but the recorder caught it clearly. One word. Soon. We never went back. I sold the tent, the packs, even the damn boots. Rose can't look at tree lines anymore. She takes the freeway detour around any park. Me? I sleep with a light on, and I still check the window locks twice before bed. The police closed the case. The recording, though, I still have it. I don't listen to it, but I know it's there. I don't know what stood at the edge of our camp that night. I don't know how it vanished from a flashlight beam or why it counted 7 marks on that fur. Part of me doesn't want to know. But sometimes when I wake up in the dark at exactly 3:35, I can still feel that palm pressing against the tent wall, and I wonder if the 8th notch ever got carved. I never told anyone the whole thing. Bits and pieces, sure. I mentioned I got spooked on a solo camping trip, had a panic attack, packed out early. But the truth? The truth has sat in my gut like a swallowed stone for 2 years. I'm writing it now because maybe getting it out will stop me checking my own shadow every time I walk past a street lamp. Probably not, but here we are. It was late October 2022. I'd been working IT support remotely for 3 years, living in a Milwaukee studio that smelled like coffee and regret. My girlfriend had left in July, and I'd coped by doing absolutely nothing about it. The solo camping thing was supposed to be proof that I could handle being alone, that I was self-reliant, all that motivational poster bullshit. I picked Kettle Moraine State Forest, decent cell-dead zones, enough trail miles to feel remote. I parked my Subaru Outback at a trailhead off Highway 67 and hiked about 4.5 miles in, well past the day hiker range. My pack was heavy, my boots were new, and I was already sweating through my base layer. Classic. I found a clearing a little off the Ice Age trail, maybe 30 feet into the trees, just big enough for my MSR tent and a small fire ring someone had left before. The ground was covered in dead maple leaves and pine needles, everything dry. I set up camp while I still had light, collected deadfall, and ran through the mental checklist I'd watched on YouTube a dozen times. By the time the sun dropped, I had a decent fire going and a rehydrated meal of something that claimed to be chili. The silence hit me then. Not the absence of sound, but the weight of it. No wind, no birds, just the fire crackling and the sound of my own breathing. I told myself that was normal, that I was just adjusting to the quiet. Around 10 p.m., I did what any modern idiot does. I took photos from my phone, scrolled through cached messages, pretended I wasn't completely alone. I had my Benchmade Griptilian in my jacket pocket and a headlamp around my neck, though I kept it off to save battery. The fire was small now, just a bed of orange coals, and the temperature was dropping fast. I remember checking my watch, 2:47 a.m. I hadn't meant to stay up that late, but my brain wouldn't shut up. I moved my camp chair closer to the embers, wrapped my puffy jacket tighter, and just stared into the glow. That's when I noticed it. I was leaning forward, elbows on my knees, and my shadow was stretching out behind me, long and wavering with the firelight. Normal, except there were 2 of them, one cast straight back from the fire. The other, sharper, darker, stretched off to my right, maybe at a 40-degree angle, like someone was shining a light from the tree line. I froze. My first thought was headlamp reflection, maybe a piece of reflective tape on my jacket, something stupid. I turned my head slowly, following the line of that second shadow. There was no light source, just the absolute blackness of the forest, the faint gray shapes of tree trunks. I raised my hand, wiggled my fingers. Both shadows moved. I felt a cold trickle down my spine, the kind that has nothing to do with weather. I stood up, chair scraping on the dirt. The second shadow vanished. Instantly, just gone, like a screen flickering off. I stood there for probably a full minute, barely breathing, shining my headlamp into the woods in a sweeping arc. Nothing. No eye shine, no movement. I laughed at myself, That shaky kind of laugh you do when you've just proven you're an idiot. Refraction, I said out loud. Smoke from the fire making a lens effect. I didn't believe a word of it, but I sat back down anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? Pack up and hike out at 3 in the morning? Over a shadow? The fire popped. I threw on another small branch and watched it catch. Maybe 10 minutes passed. The shadow reappeared. This time it was longer, much longer. My own shadow from the fire was a shapeless blob on the ground. But the second one was razor crisp, stretching 8 feet to my right, the head unnaturally elongated. And it was still, wrongly still. The firelight flickered, my shadow danced, but that second one held steady, like it was painted on the leaf litter. My heart started kicking against my ribs. I didn't turn this time. I just stared at it. My hand was trembling. I could feel the cold again, radiating from the direction of that shadow, a dead air cold that didn't belong. I remember thinking, very clearly, there is no light source. There is no light source. My brain kept trying to build one, inventing a flashlight, a lantern, anything. But there was nothing. I reached down slowly and unclipped the knife from my pocket, thumbed the blade open. The sound was too loud. I stood up and pivoted in one motion, headlamp on full, knife held low. The trees were empty, just the same pines, the same bare oaks, the same dark between them. But the shadow on the ground was still there, attached to me, cast from nothing. I took a step sideways. It followed. I jumped. It jumped, but a split second late, like it was mimicking me with lag. I felt my throat close up. That's when I heard the footstep, a single dry crunch of leaves, maybe 15 feet away, directly on the line of that shadow. I swung the headlamp, and I saw him. About 20 meters out, just past the edge of my little clearing, there was a man, tall, thin, wearing what looked like dark, shapeless clothes. No coat, no hat, just a silhouette. He was standing utterly motionless. In his right hand, held at chest height, was a flashlight, aimed right at my face. The beam was white, too white, almost blue, the kind of light you get from a camera flash, but continuous. It didn't flicker. It didn't waver. It just painted me in pale light and cast that impossibly sharp second shadow behind me. The man's face was completely invisible behind the glare. I couldn't see his eyes, but I knew he was looking at me. I have never been more certain of anything. I tried to say something. "Hey," came out, cracked and weak. "Who's there?" My voice sounded like a kid's. The figure didn't move, didn't lower the light, didn't acknowledge I'd spoken. The silence was so complete I could hear my own pulse in my ears. I remember the smell, ozone, like after a lightning strike, and wet ashes, though my fire was bone dry. Then the flashlight clicked off. The sound was mechanical, a crisp little snick that echoed between the trees. The figure was gone, not hid, not turned away. Gone. The space where he'd stood was just empty dark. My second shadow disappeared with the light, and I was left in the dim orange glow of my dying fire, knife shaking in my hand, breath pluming white. I stood frozen for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, an eternity. I could feel him watching me from somewhere in the black, the weight of his attention like fingers on my neck. The giggle came from my left. It was high and thin, almost a child sound, but it carried a resonance that made my back teeth ache. Then a footstep, then another. Slow, deliberate, circling the clearing just beyond the tree line. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. My body moved before my brain caught up. I bolted. I didn't grab my pack. I didn't get the tent. I just ran, headlamp beam bouncing wildly, knife still in my hand. The trail was a ribbon of pale dirt in the dark. Branches whipped my face. I fell once, hard, skidded on wet leaves, and bashed my shin on a root, ripped my palms open. I got up without feeling the pain and kept running. I could hear my own sobbing breaths, the frantic rasp of it. Behind me, the footsteps stopped at the edge of the clearing. I swear I heard that same giggle again, fainter now, almost amused. The hike that had taken me 2 hours in daylight, I covered in maybe 20 minutes. I burst out onto the gravel lot, scrambled into the Subaru, and locked the doors with a trembling, bloody hand. The key slid into the ignition after 3 tries. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I reversed, floored it onto the highway, and didn't slow down until I hit the lights of West Bend. I sat in a gas station parking lot until sunrise, still gripping the knife, headlamp batteries dead. Now here's the part that keeps me up. Not the figure, not the shadow, not even that giggle. After I got home, after I'd showered and bandaged my hands and thrown my jacket in the trash because it still smelled like ozone, I did the only thing that felt normal. I pulled up my phone photos. Most were from earlier in the evening. The fire, my tent, a stupid selfie. But there was one taken at 3:22 a.m. I don't remember taking it. It's a shot of the tree line, the same direction the figure had been standing. The flash didn't fire. The image is dark, grainy, lit only by the fire's red coals. But between 2 pine trunks, there's a shape, tall, thin, not quite a person, but too upright to be a tree. You can't see a face, just a suggestion of a shoulder, a tilted head, a faint vertical smudge that might be a flashlight held at rest. I zoomed in 100 times. I wanted it to be a branch, a shadow, a smudge on the lens. It isn't. The police, I called them 2 days later, once I'd convinced myself I wasn't crazy. They hiked out there and found my tent still standing, my gear untouched. No footprints but my own. No sign of anyone. Probably a prankster, the officer said, not looking me in the eye. You're lucky you got out. I still don't know what I saw. I don't camp anymore. I sold the Subaru because the headlights at night made me sweat. I live in a downtown apartment now. Top floor, street lights always on. I check my shadow every time I walk past a window, and I still have that photo, buried in a hidden folder, never looked at, but never deleted. Sometimes late at night, when I'm trying to sleep, I feel that cold again, just for a second. The kind of cold that comes from nowhere, from no open window, no draft, like a second shadow waiting to fall.